And welcome to this Yoga for Cyclists class. So we're going to start in a seated position. You can either sit like I am and just on my shins. This gives a little bit of a stretch through the fronts of the ankles and also through the quads. However, this can be a little bit uncomfortable for some people, so if you prefer, you can come to a cross-legged position or just have the legs out in front. We'll probably be here for a few minutes. Just make sure you're nice and comfortable. If you've got a cushion, you can always place it behind the backs of the legs just to give you a little bit more space. That can feel better for some people as well. So just get yourself set up, and then when you're ready, we'll start with a few deep breaths. You might like to close your eyes or soften the gaze for this first bit. And we'll just take a few deep breaths, breathing into the belly. Just checking in how you're feeling today. And then on the next exhale, we'll just bring the left hand out towards the side and then sweep the right arm up and over, palm facing down. You can either stay here if you're sat like I am. You might like to just shift the hips over towards the right, just increasing the stretch across the hip and the side body. And then on the next inhale, just coming back up, and we'll take it straight over to the opposite side. Again, maybe just letting the hips drop off towards the left, deepening into that stretch. And then inhaling, coming back up to center. From here, we'll take our right hand, place it to the outside of the left leg, bring the left hand behind us. We'll just take a gentle twist here, maybe sending the gaze over the left shoulder if that feels good for the neck. And then unwind, taking it to the opposite side, so the left hand to the outside of the right knee, right hand come in behind you. And then on the exhale, maybe sending the gaze over the opposite shoulder. And then slowly unwinding. From here, taking your hands, just interlacing the fingers and sending the palms out in front of you, stretching through the palms of the hands and the fingers. And just holding it here. And then sending the arms up and overhead. Continue stretching through the palms of the hands. And then exhale, releasing the arms down by the side. From here, we'll interlace the fingers behind us. This time palms facing each other. And you can start to draw the hands down, either drawing the palms together, or you can have the grip quite loose if you're a bit tight in the shoulders. And we'll just start to feel it opening across the chest, maybe sending the gaze up. And on the exhale, if you like, you can start to hinge forward at the hips. Bring the head down, maybe coming to forehead on the floor. Or if you cross the leg, just working in that direction. Arms coming up towards the ceiling. Taking a few deep breaths here. And then gently releasing the arms. You might like to just send them out in front of you. Maybe coming into a child's pose position, stretching through the armpits. And just taking a few deep breaths here, breathing into the backs of the ribs, feeling the ribs expand. And wherever you are, we'll just slowly make our way up and come into an all-fours position. So we want to make sure our shoulders are stacked over our wrists, our hips are over the knees. And we'll take a few cat-cows here. So on the inhale, drop the belly down, lifting the gaze up. And then exhale, bring the chin in towards the chest, round through the back, navel draws in. We'll do that a few more times. So inhale, coming up, dropping the belly down. Exhale, navel to spine, chin to chest, rounding through the spine. Last time, inhale to come up. And exhale, rounding through the spine, navel drawing in. And inhale, just coming back to our all fours position. From here, send the left foot out behind you, coming onto the ball of that left foot. And just gently start to rock back and forth, getting a nice stretch through the back of the leg, through the calf. And then coming back to centre, lifting that left leg up and just placing it towards the right side of the mat, and then sending the gaze towards the toes. So getting a nice stretch through the side of the body, maybe even the IT band as well. And then bring that foot back in, and then sending it to the other side. So you want the toes behind the ankle. Let me show you from this position. And then maybe tuck in the toes here. You can either stay here, you're going to nice stretch in the inner leg. Or if you want to take it a bit further, maybe just dropping the hips back, maybe even walking the hands forward, dropping the head down. Just see where you are today. If you've got the toes tucked, then you're also getting a nice stretch through the arch of the foot. Otherwise, if that's too much, you can always come onto the top of the foot as well. Just holding it here for another round of breath. And then gently coming forward, stepping that left leg in. And we'll take that on the opposite side now. So from here, sending the right leg out, just coming onto the ball of the foot, and then just gently start to rock back and forth, stretching through the back of the calf. And lifting that leg up, placing it over towards the left and sending the gaze towards the left toes, stretching across the hip, IT band and the side body. Something we often can find gets quite tight when we cycle a lot. And then lifting that leg up, and we'll take it to the opposite sides, out towards the right side, toes pointing forward. And again, maybe tucking that back foot, maybe sending the hips backwards and walking the hands out in front. Taking a few deep breaths here. And then make your way back into that all fours position. Just rechecking your alignment here. We will start to generate some heat in the core now. We want to make sure we push into the whole hand, so spreading the fingers nice and wide, pushing the knuckles into the mat, tucking those toes under. And we want our arms about shoulder distance apart, and we want the wrist stacked under the shoulders. So from here, on the next inhale, draw the navel in, lift the knees off to hover for 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and gently placing them back down. If you've got quite sore wrists, you can always just take some pressure off the wrist quickly. And then placing the hands back down, tucking those toes once again. And this time on the inhale, drawing the navel in, we'll lift the knees up, but we'll continue to lift the hips up and back, coming into our downwards facing dog. This is a really great stretch for the whole back body, the hamstrings, the calves, and also generating a lot of strength in the upper body as well. We just want to make sure we're pushing into the whole hand here, so not just dumping the weight into the heel, it's really pushing through the knuckles of the fingers, keeping the fingers spread nice and wide. And if you're quite tight in the hamstrings, you can keep a bend in the knees. We want to keep the back nice and straight, broadening through the shoulders, maybe pedaling out the feet, bend and straighten one at a time, just waking up the hips. If at any point this gets a bit too much, just make your way back into your all fours position, and you can just take a few movements here, maybe some circles with the hips instead. That's still quite a good one for get some movement in the hips. So if you're in your downwards facing dog, we'll just come to stillness and then come up onto the balls of the feet, and we'll just drop the heels over towards the left, stretching through the IT band again. Nice deep stretch here, and then lifting those heels back up, coming back to centre, and then just dropping them over to the opposite side. And then inhale, coming back up to centre, and then gently placing the knees back down on the floor, maybe releasing the weight off the wrists for a moment. And then making your way back into that all fours position. So from here, sending the left leg out long behind you, toes pointing down, keeping that leg nice and engaged. Making sure your hips not coming up at all, that they're nice and level. And then on the exhale, draw the navel in and bring that knee in towards the nose. Hold it here. And then see if you can plant the foot down in front of the hands. If you can't quite get there, then just use your left hand to guide the foot there. So we're moving into a low lunge position, checking your knee is stacked over the ankle. You might like to shimmy the back knee back if you want to get into the hip flexors a little bit more. Checking our hips are nice and level. And maybe staying on the fingertips so you can bring the hands up onto the knee and just dropping down here for a nice deep breath. And then wherever you are, just bringing the fingertips down onto the floor. They're not really having much pressure in the fingers, so if you can't reach, you can hold on to something near you, just for balance. And then from here, we'll just start to straighten the leg and flexing the toes in towards the knee, walking the hands backwards if you like. So this is our half splits pose, really great stretch for the back of the leg. And then just extend the toes out towards the front of the mat. And inhale, flex them back in. Just do that a couple of times, noticing how that changes the stretch in the leg as you do so. If you do have yoga blocks or books or anything and you are able to grab them, you can always use them to support the hands as well. Just if you want that extra bit of height. And then planting that foot back down, moving back into your low lunge position. From here on the inhale, we'll sweep the arms up and overhead. Gaze can be up if that feels okay for the neck. And on the exhale, drawing the hands together and just draw them down in front of the chest. So the prayer in front of the chest. And on the exhale, we'll start to rotate towards the left side of the room. And we'll be placing the outside of the elbow on the outside of the left knee. Moving on the exhale, just because we've got a bit of extra room, makes it a bit easier to get into these twists. And then once you're there, you can start to push into the palms of the hands to deepen you into that twist. Maybe tucking the back toes, lifting that knee off the floor if you like. And we'll just hold it here for around a breath. And then just placing that knee back down on the floor, slowly unwinding on the inhale, bringing the arms back up and overhead. And on the exhale, dropping the left hand forward, right hand back, twisting over towards the opposite side. Inhale, coming back up to center. And exhale to place the hands back down on the floor. So from here, taking the left foot, we'll just start to heel toe the foot out towards the outside of the left hand. You want your toes so they're about 45 degrees out. Knee is tracking in the same direction as the toes, so maybe adjusting it as much as you need. And then coming onto the full hand, maybe shimmying the back knee back if you like. And you can either stay here in our lizard pose, or if you're quite open in the hips, you might like to come down onto the forearms. Or you might like to pick up the back knee and just work here, just work wherever feels good for you. You might notice that changes day to day as well. I'm just taking a few deep breaths here, really getting into the hip flexors. And then bringing the right hand so it's in front of the face. On the next inhale, we'll sweep that left arm up, fingertips towards the ceiling, moving into a twist. And then exhale, bring that left hand behind us, maybe sending the gaze towards the back thumb. You can stay here if you like, or if you want to go into a quite deep quad stretch, you can start to bend the back knee and maybe take in the ankle with that left hand. If you can't quite get there, no worries, we're just working in this direction. If you've got a rolled up towel or a belt, then you can always place it around the ankle as well, so that's another option. And just taking a few deep breaths in whichever option you're taking today. And slowly releasing that leg, cartwheeling the arm back, so we're back in our lizard position. And then from here, we'll start to heel toe that left foot to the opposite side of the mat, so it's behind the right wrist. And then just dropping the knee down on the floor. So if you've got quite tight knees, you might like to have the shin angled in slightly, so I'll have mine in angled. If you're quite open in the knees, then you can have the leg out and straight, but you just want to have the toes pointed in towards the knee to protect that knee. So just taking whichever option is best for you in this pigeon pose. Checking your back toes are straight, your legs nice and straight. Checking your hips are in line, so you might have a bit of a gap between the left bum and the floor like I do. You can take a blanket or a cushion and pop it there, or we just want to make sure our hips are level, so as long as you're not kind of falling to one side, it's perfectly fine to stay like this. And if you are feeling any pain in the knee at this point, then just quickly come out of the pose and I'll give you an alternative. For those that want to stay in a pigeon pose, you can either stay here in a tall pigeon, or you can start to walk the arms forward, maybe dropping the head down towards the floor, moving into our sleeping pigeon. Just taking a few deep breaths there. If you would like to take our reclined pigeon option, you'll be just coming onto your back, placing both soles of the feet on the floor, lifting that left leg up and placing the ankle over the right knee, and start to open out with that left knee. So this is your first option. Your second option is to lift the right leg off the floor and maybe take the hands, interlace them around that right leg, or maybe even the shin. Just holding it here, keeping the toes pointing in towards the knee, and holding it there for a few deep breaths. Whichever option you take, you get a nice stretch in the outer hip, maybe even opening up the hip flexors as well. Just holding it here for another deep breath. And then when you're ready, just slowly walking the hands back up, placing the hands on the floor if you're in your pigeon pose, tucking the back foot and lifting that front knee and just coming back into our all fours position. You can take some little movements here, maybe just shaking out the hips, maybe just coming onto the ball of the foot, making up the calf, or maybe even coming back into your downwards dog and just stretching it out. And when you're ready, making your way back into your all fours position, we're going to do that same sequence on the opposite side now. So working with the right leg this time, we'll send the right leg out behind us, toes pointed down. And on the exhale, drawing that knee in towards the nose, rounding through up the back, holding it there, and seeing whether you can plant that foot down on the floor. Checking your knees stacked over your ankle, making any adjustments that you need. Maybe moving that left knee back to get a bit more into the hip flexors. And then staying on the fingertips or bringing the hands to the top of the knee. And just holding it here for a few deep breaths. And then wherever you are, we're just going to bring our fingertips down onto the floor or a block if you want the extra height. And then we'll just start to straighten that front leg, walking the hands backwards, starting to flex the toes in towards the knee. And like we did on the other side, we'll just start to extend the toes out towards the front of the mat and then draw them in towards the knee. Starting to get some movement in the back of the leg. And then placing that foot back down, walking the hands back into our low lunge position. And on the next inhale, sweeping the arms up and overhead, gaze can be up. And then drawing the hands together on the exhale, start to draw them down in front of the chest. Holding it here for the inhale. And on the next exhale, we'll be taking the left elbow to the outside of the right leg, starting to twist through the spine, seeing whether we can place that elbow down, and then continue to push into the hands to deepen into that stretch, that twist rather. We're working towards having the elbows stacked in a straight line, but that's just the direction we're working in. So if you're not quite there today, that's perfectly fine. We're just working towards that. And staying here, and maybe tucking the back toes, lifting that leg off the floor. You might notice it's a bit more challenging, a bit more need for balance. And then gently placing the knee back down on the floor if you've got it lifted, and on the inhale, we'll gently unwind, bring the arms up and overhead. And then exhale, we'll take the left hand down behind us, right hand forward, twisting over towards the opposite side. Maybe sending the gaze towards that back bum. Inhale, bringing both arms back up and overhead. And exhale, placing the hands back down on the floor. So from here we'll move into our lizard pose. So taking the front foot and start to heel toe it to the outside of the right hand. Toes are pointed out about 45 degrees, tracking the same direction as the knee. Coming onto the whole hand, maybe shimmying that back knee back. And you can either stay here, or you might like to come onto forearms. You might like to try and lift that back knee off the ground. You can even take some small movements here if you really want to get into the hip. And just holding it here for a few deep breaths. Noticing whether this side feels different to the other side, that's perfectly normal. It's just good to be aware of these subtle differences. Then we'll bring our left hand so it's in front of the face. And on the inhale, we'll just sweep the right arm up. Gaze can be up, moving into a twist. And then sending the arm back behind us. Maybe bringing the gaze towards that back finger. And you can stay here if you would like to take that quad stretch. You can start to bend the back knee and see whether you can take the ankle with that hand. You might need to bring the fingertip or come up onto the fingertips. You can even come up onto the knee. That requires a bit more balance. And you can start to push into the top of the foot, really deepening into that quad stretch if you like. It is quite a deep stretch, so just see where you are today, and you might just be working here, and that's perfectly fine as well. Just holding it for a few more deep breaths. And gently, with control, just releasing that foot, cartwheeling the back arm back, so we're back in our lizard pose. And then from here, we'll heel toe that front foot so it's behind the left wrist, and then place that knee down on the floor. Maybe just tucking the leg in if you're quite tight in the knee like I am, or if you've got the leg out straight, just remembering to keep the toes pointing towards the knee, just to protect the knee. Back foot should be out straight, checking the hips are level. I'm just taking a few deep breaths here, maybe staying in our tall pigeon pose, or you can walk the hands down, maybe dropping the head down, maybe even reaching the arms out in front if you've got the room. Just taking a few deep breaths in our sleeping pigeon, or of course you can come down into a reclined pigeon, so on our backs, soles of the feet on the floor, and just crossing the right ankle over the left knee, and maybe lifting the left leg off the ground, maybe interlacing the hands. So just taking whichever option is best for you, staying there. Another few deep breaths. And then when you're ready to come out of it, just slowly making your way up. With the hands, the palms of the hands to the floor. Tucking the back foot, lifting that front knee back, maybe coming into a downwards facing dog. Or just taking some movements of the hips in an all forward position. Just taking whatever you feel that you need right now. And we'll make our way onto our bums from here. Bring our feet out in front, soles of the feet on the floor. Just make sure you've got enough room behind you because we'll be making our way down onto the floor. Hands out in front, palms facing each other. Really start to draw that navel in, engaging the core. And we'll just start to make our way down onto the mat. Trying to move with control, seeing whether you can keep the soles of the feet on the floor for as long as possible. And then bring the arms up and over, stretching the legs out long, full body stretch here. And exhale, let it go, release. So we've done a lot for the legs and the hips. From cycling, we do tend to get very tight hip flexors, and we can also get some lower back pain from tight hamstrings and also outer hips. So we've done a bit to relieve the tension in those areas. We're going to do a bit more on the hamstrings now. So just to finish the class, we'll bring the soles of the feet on the floor and we'll start with the left leg. And we'll just send the left leg up straight, flexing the toes in towards the knee. And we'll take the hands behind the thigh or maybe behind the calf to see where you are today. And we want to start to push through the heel of the foot and see whether you can pull the pinky toe in towards the knee so that leg is nice and active. Now from here you might like to send the right leg out long, so you're going to stretch it in the hip flexor as well. And we're just going to hold it here for a few deep breaths. If you start to notice your leg is shaking a little bit, then you can just ease out of it. And slowly come back into it and just see where you are today. You can always work with your breath here, so on the inhale just gently easing out, and on the exhale gently coming back into it. And if you just work with your breath, you might notice that you can slowly get a little bit deeper into the pose. And on the next exhale, wherever you are, we're just going to hold it there. And then gently just release, keeping the sole of the foot up, facing at the ceiling. We're going to move to a hip opener now. So bringing our right hand to our hip, we want to make sure that our right hip is staying grounded in this. Left hand can come out towards the side of the left leg. And we'll just start to open the left leg up towards the left side, supporting the leg as much as we can, making sure that hip is grounded. And just taking a few deep breaths here. And then inhale, supporting that leg, coming back up to centre. This time we'll take the left arm, bring it out towards the side, palm facing down. And we want to keep the left shoulder so it's grounded this time. Bring our right hand to the outside of the left leg and just start to draw that leg across the body. So if you haven't got enough room like I don't, you can bend the knee here, that's perfectly fine. And we're not too worried about letting the knee fall down towards the floor, it's just wherever we naturally kind of go today. These twists are really good for the back, for the spine. And you might like to even send the gaze out towards the left fingers, getting a stretch through the neck as well. And we'll just hold it here for a few deep breaths. And then just supporting that leg, coming back up to centre. And we'll send that left leg out long. Just take a moment here to notice how that left leg feels compared to the right leg. Maybe one leg feels slightly longer than the other. So we're going to take that on the opposite side now. So bringing both soles of the feet to the floor once again. And this time bringing the right leg up. Start to push through the heel, drawing that pinky toe in towards the knee. And then interlacing the hands behind the leg, whatever feels good for you. And then maybe sending the left leg out long. Now you might already notice that this side feels slightly different to the other. I think I'm slightly tighter in this leg, so I'm going to ease off a little bit more. And again, you might like to work with your breath. So on the inhale, just easing out of the stretch slightly. And on the exhale, just seeing whether you can draw that knee in any further. Just doing that a few times, working with your own breath. And then on the next exhale, just holding it there. And then gently releasing, bringing that left hand to the left hip once again, keeping that hip nice and grounded. Right hand comes to the outside of the right leg, and we'll just start to open up that leg towards the right side, keeping that hips grounded on the floor. Just going as far as you can. And slowly on the inhale, support the leg coming back in. This time we'll bring the right arm out towards the right side, palm facing down, keeping that shoulder grounded on the floor, bringing the left hand to the outside of the leg. And just start to draw that leg across the body. The hip can lift on this side, it's just the shoulder we need to keep grounded. And then maybe sending the gaze over those fingertips to get a stretch through the neck. And just take a few deep breaths here. And slowly supporting that leg, coming back up to center, sending that leg out long, just noticing how that feels for a moment. And then just drawing both knees in towards the chest. You might like to take hands to the knees and just draw some circles with the knee in one direction and in the opposite direction. Just taking any last movements here before we move into our final resting pose. And I'll give you a couple of options for this final resting pose. So you can either come to the traditional Shavasana with the legs out long, arms out towards the side, palms facing up. Or if you have a bit of tension in the lower back, you can bring the soles of the feet to mat distance apart and just let the knees drop in towards each other. That just supports the lower back a bit more. Or if you would like to continue to open up the hips, I invite you to bring the soles of the feet together and just letting the knees drop out so your legs are forming a diamond shape. And if you've got some pillows or anything to hand, you can always place them under the legs to support them a little bit and play around with the distance the feet are in towards the body as well. And you may even like to place the left hand on the chest and the right hand on the belly here. And maybe softening the gaze, closing the eyes. We'll just take a few deep breaths. Just checking back in with the body and the mind. Just noticing how we feel and how that differs to the start of the practice today. Now, if you've got the time, I invite you to stay in this final resting pose for as long as you can. Otherwise, you can start to just gently make some small movements Maybe wriggling the fingers, the wrists, the toes, the ankles. You can start to gently move the head side to side. Maybe supporting the legs and drawing them in towards the chest, hugging the knees in. And when you're ready, just gently making your way up to the seated position. Bringing the hands in to prayer position in front of the chest. And we'll just take one deep inhale together, reaching the arms out wide, drawing them up and overhead. Bring the palms together. And exhale, drawing the hands back down. And if you like, you can start to open the eyes if you've got them closed. And that brings us to the end of this class today. I hope you really enjoyed it, and I hope you find this practice useful if you've just been for a cycle or just about to go out for one. And I thank you for practicing with me today.